Greetings everybody. Today we're going to be diving into a single malt scotch. As promised, it will be a sherried one, and it's a pretty tasty treat. Let's dive into it. We've got the Aberlour. Whoa, girl. This is their, I would say probably their flagship, at least it's their entry level, I think. I don't believe they have a 10. This is the one you're most likely to find at bars. This is one that's going to be an easy recommend to have on your shelf as far as, cost to taste. And I think it's a good one to have on this list. So it's double cask matured, and if you read the bottle, what it says is that it's aged in American oak casks and sherry oak casks. So we don't know what the sherry oak is. A lot of sherry, I think, comes from Spain, so it could be Spanish oak. But when they say American oak, what they probably mean is ex-bourbon casks. The Scotch industry and the bourbon industry have a pretty tightly wound relationship with one another because bourbon has to use virgin American oak in their casks, and Scotch doesn't have that restriction, and they're constantly in search of casks. So a lot of the Scotch distillers end up buying ex-bourbon casks because the bourbon distillers, once they age bourbon in them, they can't use them again. So my guess is the American oak in this is an ex-bourbon cask and double cask matured. I mean, it's hard to say what that means exactly, if they age all the Scotch in one type of barrel and then in another, or if they age it 12 years, some in one, some in the other, and then blend them together. Because to be a single malt, it doesn't mean that all of the Scotch has to have, stuck together the whole time from distillation through aging into bottling. Really all it means is that it has to all come from the same distillery. And with a 12-year age statement on it, all that means is that the youngest Scotch in this bottle has to be at least 12 years old. Don't know whether it was sherry seasoned versus sherry aged casks, and it's 40% ABV, which is the bare minimum in the US to even call it whiskey. But hey, if it's good, we'll forgive them. So let's pour it up, give it a nose, give it a taste. Well, this might be the hardest bottle of Scotch I've ever opened. Oh, at least the cork pop was nice. Alright, so Aberlour is a Speyside Scotch. So Speyside, it's a Scotch producing region of Scotland it's in the north, but like sort of the central area of where Scotch these days is made. And I believe it's actually the place in Scotland where they either have the most Scotch distilleries or they sell the most Scotch, or maybe even both. I'm not really sure. The Scotch hubs of Scotland have kind of shifted throughout the past however many centuries, but currently Speyside, that's really the heart of where Scotch is coming from these days. It's denoted usually by like a softer, sweeter, I believe, maybe like even floral flavor profile. But I think a lot of that goes out the window when you introduced sherry casks to the mix when you're finishing it in a different type of cask. So I don't know that we're going to pick up really on any of that. Especially if the bourbon cask, if there's a lot of flavor that's imparted from that too. Usually bourbon cask, it's kind of safe for scotches to not alter the flavor of the malt a ton. Especially if they're not first fill, like if they're second or third fill casks. But we don't know. Let's just give this a nose, give it a taste, see what we think. So right off the bat, this is not as sherry forward as the Naked Grouse for sure. I don't know. I remember the Balvenie double wood on the nose. It didn't really come across as being sherry forward either. So far maybe it's more similar to that. And I'm getting the malt. I'm having trouble picking up on a ton. Maybe that's because I've had a few tonight. Maybe it's because this is, I think, the first 40% ABV whiskey we've had. It's like the lowest alcohol content of any whiskey we've had so far on the calendar. But let's give it one more nose and then give it a taste. Okay, I think I'm getting a little bit of the sherry. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. More that like a tad bit of the like danky ginginess. I don't think a ton of the fruity quality. I think most of the sweetness I'm getting on this is just from the malt. Anyway, let's taste it, see what it's about. So the first thing that's evident to me when I taste it isn't the flavor, it's the viscosity. So there's not a lot, it's a little bit thin, which is fine, depending on your mood, depending on what you want. If you're in the mood for something that's a little bit lighter, you just want something easy to sip on. And maybe on like a weeknight, you don't want to get drunk, you don't want to be too, I don't know, like overpowered by what you're drinking, even flavor-wise. Then I think you do want a lower ABV, so that's, and maybe even lower viscosity, so I think that's fine. And then I get more fruity notes as it develops into the back palate, but not in like a strong or pungent way. Like in retrospect, I think the Naked Grouse and maybe even the Balvenie to some extent, like, it was a little too, not too punchy, but it was punchy at times with the sherry delivery. This one I definitely wouldn't describe as being punchy really in any way. Maybe even a touch of the bourbon cask is coming through, like on the back end of the malt that I'm picking up here. And then it kind of finishes more into soft sherry notes. So this is a very delicate Scotch, I would say. If you really want to pick up on the notes, I think you got to really focus, at least I do right now, on how it changes. That's the best thing that I've been able to focus on to really pick up on any notes at all, is trying to figure out like, okay, what's happening and how is it changing? And yeah, I'm getting, it's malt forward, and I pick up a touch of the bourbon casks on the malt, like almost like the extra sweetness, or like a caramel, maybe a touch of caramel on that, and then it develops more into traditional like sherry notes in the back palate and the finish. Yeah, I think that's what I'm sticking with. Less of the sherry on that sip, but I know it's been there for the other ones. Well, let's give it one more, see if it sticks around or not. Yeah, so it's there, but it's faint. It's delicate, it's light. What is Scotch, right? It's malted barley. You have that spirit, you have the general flavor characteristics of aged Scotch, you know, aging that spirit in oak. And then sherry, that's introducing something else, right? So if you age it in, you know, for its whole maturation in sherry casks, you're going to get so much sherry influence that it's going to change, you know, the flavor profile completely from having, you know, being malt forward, from what the spirit really is. And then even if you finish it, just, you know, age it normally and then finish it in these sherry casks, you're still changing that and you're introducing something new. And that really is the sherry that's present in that oak. What I think is really cool about this bottle is that you get the sherry influence, but you retain the character of the malt, the original spirit, and how it's originally aged. And while it is delicate, I do think that if you pay attention, there's some complexity there because it evolves as you taste it. And I think that's pretty cool. It's hard for me to, sherry scotches in general, it's going to be hard for me to recommend where to go from here, just because price is a bigger issue with Scotch in general, especially good sherried scotches, and the influence of the sherry can differ in so many ways that I offhand, I don't know that I can recommend another sherried Scotch to you that is really malt forward like this one, that retains the character of the malt so well. So all I can tell you is what I am interested in now after tasting this. I want to taste older versions of this. I want to taste the 16, the 18, to see what they're all about, because this is 12 years. I don't know if the 16, that extra 4 years, if that's all in sherried oak or not, if it's split up differently. I have no idea. Same with the 18, but I'm really curious now. If you want to see how different this distillery can get, I would recommend a bottle called the Aberlour Abunak, and it's a non-age stated, batch proof, sherried Scotch that will knock your socks off. It'll come out swinging. It's really strong stuff. It can be hard, at least it was for me when I was first getting into Scotch, to decipher the different flavors you're getting from it and identify how they correspond with the sherry influence. But it's a really good one, and I wouldn't say it tastes like this, but I would say it's if you're only going to try one other Aberlour in your life, I would recommend that it be the Aberlour Abunak. So give it a go, whether you like this or not, I think. But I do hope you like this. I do hope you appreciated it. I'm really curious to know whether everyone likes the more, in-your-face sherry scotches that we've tried so far, or the more delicate, balanced, I'd say, sherry scotches like this one right here. So let me know. Text, comment, whatever. I'm just really, really curious. Anyway, we got a good whiskey coming up tomorrow. Excited to share it with you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Cheers.